my name is Eli Meir Kaplan, and I shoot lifestyle commercial photography and editorial photography. And I wanted to talk today about coming to commercial photography from a documentary background. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself. So my main interest before, or I had an interest before photography in like meeting people from other backgrounds and connecting with people who I might not ordinarily connect with. And I felt like it was important to connect with people because when you don't relate to one another, there's a lot of distance, and groups of people can feel pretty different from each other. So I was interested in that. And around that time, I discovered the work of Bruce Davidson. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with Bruce Davidson's work, but I will show you some of his work that particularly caught my interest. So he's a Magnum documentary photographer. And here we go. Okay. So he had this project, East 100th Street, which was just absolutely fantastic. And the way that, I'm trying to figure out how I move forward with these images here. Oh, here we go. So the way that he got into these people's lives and went into their houses and apartments and connected with them on a really personal level and got images that were very respectful. Like, I think his images are always super respectful of people. And he also captures these really authentic moments that are kind of a little bit off. And it's not like a very straightforward photo. There's always like a little quirk, like this one, for example. There's something a little that really catches your attention in the image. And he also gets very close to people. And I really like that. And I really connected to it. And when I saw that, when I saw these images, I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to do documentary photography. So I started taking a documentary photography course, and I did some projects, some documentary projects. So the first one that I did, and this was kind of like trying to get into photojournalism school. So this was a project I did in Paterson, New Jersey. I was living in New York at the time, and this was a project I stumbled on this housing project for people who are HIV positive and also recovering from drug addiction. And so this was like, you know, I thought it was such an incredible opportunity to meet people who I ordinarily wouldn't like think twice to talk to and to learn about their story. And I spent a lot of time, I would go to Paterson from New York every weekend. I was working a full-time job at the time, and I would go there every weekend and you know, try to connect with the same people and photograph them. And it was tough, but it was a really incredible experience. Unfortunately, this place has caught fire a couple of years ago. Actually, it's called Straight and Narrow, or maybe last year it caught fire. But I met some really incredible people and really got to see into their lives, and I saw some things that will stick with me for a long time. So then I went to photojournalism school, and I did a story on this like a totally different subject. There was a drought in Texas. I went to UT Austin, and there's a drought in Texas, and I met a cattle rancher who was experiencing that drought, and I photographed him and his family and got to know him really well. And he always welcomed me back. Ultimately, he kind of dropped, and this happened a lot I find that it happened a lot with documentary photography, is like people would drop the ball. And I was always like, they would just like ghost, I guess you would say. and I was always terrified of like somebody ghosting me and just not having a project. So that happened at some point with this guy, but he was a really nice guy, and it was great to spend some time with him. So then finally, as like for my final project, I did this project on a kid who had autism, and he was nonverbal as well, and I did I did a multimedia piece on this too, and he had a caregiver named Sandra who wasn't his mom, but she was caring for him, and it was just such an incredible story, and also really visual, and she was so warm and welcoming, and we still keep in touch to this day. I just spoke to her the other day, actually. um, and so this project was like my entrance into the magazine world, and it was the first thing that I had published, and that from there I was able to get some magazine work. um, and something that I discovered while I was doing this, and as of course with the other projects, is that they take a super long time. Like, I was a student at this time, so I was going there like 3 days a week and spending hours at Sandra's house, and that's not really possible in real life. And on top of that, it was also I quickly found it to be very draining emotionally, um, and I started to get really exhausted and emotionally, and then also sometimes I really felt bad about this. Like sometimes a project um, it wasn't visual enough, and it ended up like turning people away because it wasn't like visual enough, and it was just awful. It felt awful because, like, for example, there was one guy who was learning to read, and he was in his 50s or something. And I remember this. I said on the phone to the person who connected me to him, that's not. I'm not sure if it's visual enough. And the guy's response was just like, oh, okay. Like he was so like he felt so insulted, and I felt that just the whole purpose of doing documentary photography was flawed in that regard. So I started to think about commercial photography, and also I wanted to mention that it pays very little, so that was another obstacle. So I started to think about commercial photography, and I realized that I could, or I felt that I could photograph commercial photography in the same style as the documentary photography I was doing. And so at first I was kind of seeing what other commercial photographers were doing, and it seemed like it was vintagey. They had like rustic cars or like old props and stuff like that. So I felt like that's what I needed to do. And so I tried doing that, and I got, talent um, and wardrobe stylists, and started to try to produce my own shoots, but I wasn't getting a good response. It really wasn't, people weren't feeling it, and it looked very staged, and it didn't look like my documentary photography at all. And so I ultimately realized that I could photograph people for commercial photography in the same way that I photograph documentary photography, and that is so either if I'm working with real people, I treat it the same way, and where I'm just kind of like a fly on the wall and just photograph people, what they're doing, but in with a more commercial sense. So let me show you let me show you this video that I did. And it was still documentary. I met this really interesting guy who repaired boomboxes, and I did a video on him. So I will show you that. Okay, let's see. No, wait.
I want to make sure those boxes are checked for the
Yes.
video
Yes.
sequencing and
Got it. Okay, here we go. Okay.
Ah.
Man, that's FM, man. It's rocking the Philharmonic. You know what? This thing deserves to get a good bath, man. It's working perfectly. I was thinking, wow, a week or two ago, someone threw it out, you know? And it rides in a little truck in the dark in a hefty bag. It doesn't know where it's going. Discarded, forgotten blaster. And then it shows up on the shelf of a thrift store in Laurel. And I found it. I mean, it went from 0 to perfectly working in like, what, 2 weeks? We're all just caretakers anyway. We got to preserve it so people down the road can find it in pretty much the same condition we left it in. Working on blasters isn't work. You know what I mean? It's fun. Reviving them. What a joy that is. You know, to think like the thing's been sitting for 20 years. And now it's like, whoa. Wake up. I mean, it's like, imagine being asleep. It's like Rip Van Winkle, man. Like, the box is dormant for 30 years, and all of a sudden it's like rocking out in front of Starbucks, man. It's got to be a treat. This is what I do. I dance, I fix stuff, and I make people smile more than they smiled all week. Imagine that.
Okay. I think it's still playing there. I have to find it. Uh-oh. I need it. Okay. Okay, got it. Okay. And I wanted to show you some of my photography that is in this is lifestyle and also has a documentary feel to it. And so you know, sometimes it's just real people and I'm photographing them doing what they like to do. And other times I need to give them cues and try to give them a little, like a story, and even kind of create a character for them. And I found that to be really useful when, especially on a commercial shoot, if I'm dealing with this, if I'm working with the same group of people throughout the day, I will create a story for them and make it not just about, you know, a particular product, but okay, this is your story. This is who you are. This is how you guys know each other. And this is the story of today. And so that helps create authentic moments. And also sometimes I have to be just really goofy with talent in particular. So this is this was a piggybacking on a motion shoot, and I do that a lot too. So they're shooting a motion shoot and I'm shooting stills, and in that scenario I'm really just like it's really more like documentary because I'm just a fly in the wall again, and I'm not giving much direction. But if it's a shoot that I'm producing myself, I try to create a story around the people. And uh, again, sometimes people need to be loosened up, and in that case, I will just be, hey, Mike, you might recognize this. I need to be as goofy, like just super goofy, and people are often kind of surprised by it, and they're like, oh, okay, and they go along with it. And when I come off completely awkward, but I think that helps loosen people up because they realize that I'm not that threatening, I guess. And and here's another situation where it was that people doing what they actually do, especially with the fitness shoots I've done. It's people doing what they actually do. Working with real couples is always a plus. Real families, especially now during COVID, that's a good opportunity to work with real families. And it's tough. It's tough with still photography because you really don't have a lot of time to get people into a character, especially if you're moving from like one group of people to another. So that is tough. But if you're doing motion, you have a little bit more time usually because there's more of a focus on a story. And so I wanted to show you another example of a motion project that I did. And so this was a story that was written by a creative director friend of mine, and we produced it, and I directed it and edited it and cast it and sourced all the props, and it was really fun. And I gave the cast, tried to give them some dimension to their characters so that they knew what they were, so they knew a little bit about the character. And I think it worked pretty well. Okay,
Wow.
there you have it. So yeah, that's what I have to present today.
So what I love, I'm just going to jump in because I've seen a lot of these as, we were first talking about doing this, but what I love about projection specifically is that it was a self-produced work, right?
Yes, yes.
But the way you tied in specifically the Coca-Cola,
Yeah.
not just the bottles, but in spot color around the place. Like you set it really sets the tone where not even saying that they'd be like, oh, we have to license this, but I could see someone at Coca-Cola looking at this and being like, yeah, let's,
Yeah, I definitely had that in mind. It was coincidence. I never asked like that. I didn't suggest to the DP to focus on the Coca-Cola bottles or like
but it was subtle.
or even, yeah. But it was funny because like that's what I had in mind when I did this, and our props stylist Stephen Guidry White, he just happened to bring these Coke bottles, and so it was perfect.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like a happy coincidence.
But it sets it from something that was a great independent, but it also gives it some commercial legs.
Yeah, that was my goal, honestly, yeah. And it worked out very well just by happenstance.
So you talked a lot about your influences. Have you, and I noticed, I think when every photo student starts out, they're shooting black and white. Do you ever, how do you shake your influence, or this is, I guess, just a larger question for photographers, but how do we sort of shake our influences to become our own person?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it just takes time. It just takes time and practice, I think. And then, starting to get other influences, and then once you start meeting with people and you see what people resonate with, and I think it just happens. It happens naturally.